Now here, REST framework. So here you have to configure two things. Okay, one is you don't require authentication classes. So permission class is required. And what is a permission class is authenticated. If is authenticated, so then it is able to access it. If it is not authenticated, not able to access. So here you can also define one more authentication called which one? Session authentication. This is basic. Basic means where you try to input the username and password. But if it is session based authentication, the user must be login first. Until unless is not login, is not allowed to access it. But in basic authentication, directly you are accessing it by sending username and password. In basic authentication, you are accessing directly by sending username and password. Means you don't require to log in first. See, you don't require to log in first. You don't require to log in first. Getting on it? You don't require to log in first. Okay. You are directly sending username and password. You are directly sending username and password, and here you are trying to verify is it that username and password is valid or not. If the username and password is valid, then you'll get this message. If the username and password is invalid, then it is not allowed to access it. Okay. So that is what will happen in basic authentication. But there is one more authentication which is called as a session authentication just here. So what will happen in session authentication is the user must be login first. Okay, user must be login first. Until unless is not login, okay, not allowed. So until unless user is not login, until unless user is not login, not allowed to access it, right? So here I'm creating a project. So here I created project, and after creating a project, so create an application. So create an application here. So try to open the project. So this is a project here. Now first step is you have to configure anyway. What do you have to configure? REST framework. Okay, you have to configure REST framework. Okay, so this has to be configured first and install the application. Install the application, and after that you have to configure what. So anyway, here you have a middleware. What is a middleware is session middleware, and what is the second one is authentication middleware. Because who will take care of whether request contain the session or not? Session middleware. It will try to identify is a session is created or not. If the session is created, then it is allowed to access it. If the session is not created, then not allowed to access it. Okay, so what will I do is I'm creating an API. So that is in views. What I have to do is I have to create a function based view. So where I have to define one permission. Okay, I have to define one permission. And what is that permission is authenticated or not. See, this view can be function based. This view can be what here? Class based. This view can be either function based or it can be what? Class based. If it is a class base, just write the name of the view. Okay. Suppose I am writing one view called some view one. Okay, view one is a view. Now this is function base. Now this is an API view. I use a decorator here, and this decorator is available here. API view, and I'm trying to define. So just import this API view decorator, and then response, and you are trying to implement is authenticated or not. So there is one class, and what is the name of the class is authenticated. And one more is you are using one more decorator called permission class. And this permission class is to know whether which permission is there or not. So here I'm writing API view, and what is the request method is get. So here I'm defining HTTP method names. And what is an HTTP method name here? Get. And at the same time, I'm trying to define the permission classes. And what is a permission class is authenticated. Permission class is what? Is authenticated. If it's authenticated, what you are trying to do is you are trying to display the details. Whose details? User details. Okay. So response. Now you are trying to return the response. And what is the response is? Okay, message welcome request dot user name. If the request is having user details, then it will try to get what? User name. Okay. But you are trying to define. So at the same time, nowadays, which type of authentication? From REST framework, now import. From REST framework import. Now here, we try to import which authentication? Basic authentication. Okay, import. And this is which authentication? Session authentication. Now, what is the authentication class is? Now you have to import even this class. And what is the name of the authentication classes? The name of the authentication classes is session authentication. The name of the authentication classes is session authentication. I'm trying to define session authent. So what is the name of the decorator is authentication classes. And which authentication system you are using it, you just add that. Now you are using an authentication called session authentication. In session authentication, the user must be logged in first. In session authentication, user must be logged in first. And in settings.py, you have to configure, okay, REST framework session configuration, you have to do it. REST framework session configuration, you have to do in settings.py. Now, what is the default authentication is REST framework dot authentication dot. Now, this is which authentication here? Session. Now, this is not basic authentication. And this is which authentication? Session authentication. Okay. And after that, you are trying to check what is the default permission is authenticated or not. If the user is authenticated, then it is allowed to access it. If the user is not authenticated, is not allowed to what here? Access it. So what is the name of the permission you are using? Is authenticated. What is the name of the permission is authenticated, right? So that is in settings.py. Okay, right? So this configuration has to be done and go to the views. And this is a view which you are trying to access it. But in order to access this endpoint, first user must be what? Authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, then it is not allowed to access this endpoint. If user is not authenticated, then it is not allowed to access this endpoint. Okay, what you do is do the migrations. So go to the terminal here and define the URLs. So from, I'm using Django, sorry, API.views. What is the name of the view is view1. The name of the view is view1 and this is the name of the view. So comma, what is the name of the class is view1, right? So it is a function based view. This is an endpoint. To access this endpoint, you must be what first authenticated, but where it is checking user details in session. So what you have to do is migrate it python manage dot py. Okay, make migrations. Okay. Mm. Okay, make migrations and then say migrate. So manage.py and then I'm saying here migrate. Okay. So you have to say migrate here, right? So migrate. So migration is done. Now you create one user. Python manage.py, create a super user, create a super user. Sorry. Python manage.py. Okay, super user, create a super user, right? So create one user. Okay. So because you have to log in with that user details. You have to log in with that user details. Now just write here python manage.py run server. Okay, run the server and log in first. Okay, what you do is log in first, open the admin. Okay, open the admin, open the admin. Okay, log in first by giving username and password. Okay, now you log in. Now, after this, what I'm doing is I'm using a postman here. I'm using a postman to verify it. Okay, I send a request to the view. I send a request to what here? View. But are you logged in or not? Yes, you have logged in. Okay, I'm logged in here. Now what I do is I create a new. So add a new request and type here. So HTTP and what is the name of the view HTTP. So what is the name of the view is view1. Name of the view is view1 and what is the request method is get. Authentication credentials were not provided. Okay, we'll try to go from browser. Okay, right? This is not from browser, right? Okay, it is a tool. Okay, it is a tool. Now what will I do is, now already we logged in. Here we logged in or not? Yes. Now I try to send a request. I try to send a request to the view. So I try to send the request to the view because where the session details get stored in browser, where the session details get stored in browser. Okay. Now you can see message welcome night. Suppose I log out here. Now suppose this user is logged out. Now you send a request. Now you can see details. Authentication credentials are not provided. So compulsory you have to log in to access that endpoint. Compulsory you have to log in to access that endpoint. So that you can call it as which authentication? session based authentication. Now you can see what is the message is welcome. Correct or not? So already we know session management. We have done the session management, right? Okay. So this is useful when you're working with web applications. Okay, when you're working with web application and when you're sending a request to endpoint and you want to maintain the state, then what do you do it? You try to put the details into what? Session. Okay. So, but you have to log in first. Suppose if I say log out and if I send a request, so what will happen is you can see details. Authentication credentials were not provided. Okay, so that is called as which authentication? Session based authentication. That's called as which authentication? Session based authentication. Okay, right? So these are the basic steps for session authentication. First, what you have to do is so configure session based authentication, configure session based authentication inside settings dot what here? Py. Inside settings.py, define the configuration and what is the name of the class you are using, session based authentication class, and what is the permission you are using, is authenticated or not. Then second step is create a view. Second step is create a view. This is an endpoint. Create a view is nothing but create what here? Endpoint. Create a view or create an endpoint. Just go to the views.py and this is the endpoint here. Okay, but this endpoint required authentication. So for that, you are using one decorator. What is the name of the decorator? Permission class as well as authentication class. Which authentication you are using? Session. So decorators are nothing but you adding some extra functionality. Adding some extra functionality to this view. Means are you checking is it user is logged in or not? No, you're not checking it. But that is done by which class? Session authentication class. And that is identified by which one is authenticated permission or not. So adding some extra functionality. And third one is third one is make migrations and make migrations and what here? Migrate. And after migrating, what you have to do is create. So create one user. And how you create a user? Something like Python manage dot py create. Which user here? Super user. And after creating a super user, okay, so log into admin. Log into what? Admin. I have taken login as a admin. Okay, then after login to admin, okay, then open another tab, create a new tab, create a new tab. Okay, and there you send a request. There you send a request by just login. Okay, send a request. Now you can see the message. And what is the message is? Message is welcome and it. So this you can call it as which authentication? Session authentication. Okay. But most of the times in endpoints, you don't go for which one? Session. Why you send your session details to another endpoint? You don't do that. Okay. So most of the times you go for basic authentication and one more is what? Token authentication, but not session. It means if you are sending your session details to another endpoint, means another application you are giving it. So is it that is secured or not secured? Not secured. Okay. So it is rarely used, but even though you should have a knowledge of it. It is rarely used, but you need to have a knowledge of it, right? Yeah. So because it will create a model where it will store user details. Yeah, it will create a model, right? It will create a model, user model. Admin create a user model or not? See, admin create a user model. Okay. Yes. You have an application called authentication. Okay. Right. The next one is token based authentication. Next one is token based authentication. So this is most of the times it is done. This token based what? Authentication. You'll say no API key. API key is nothing but what here? Token. API key is nothing but what here? Token. Okay, suppose you want some Gemini API key, you generate it. If you want what do you call it as open API key, you generate it. So that key is nothing but what here? Token. Key is nothing but what here? Token. Okay, so token based authentication. In token based authentication, okay, the endpoint is accessed by giving what here? Token. A token is nothing but what here? Key. Key to access the endpoint. Token is nothing but a key to access the endpoint. But for every user, you try to generate one key. For every user, you generate a key. Now this contain both token based means now you try to generate a key, and that key is bind with a specific user. That key is bind with what your specific user. Now, what will happen in token based authentication is, so what is token here? What is token? Okay, what is token? Token is nothing but a value. A token is a value. It is a value which consists of, which consists of, which consists of, which consists of alphabets, digits, and some special characters. It is having alphabet, digits, and special characters. And these tokens are generated. These tokens are generated what? Randomly. These tokens are generated how? Randomly. You don't generate any token. The token is generated what here? Randomly. You don't generate any token. The token is generated randomly. This token also called this token is also called API key. It is also called which one? API key. It is a key which is used, okay, which is used to access endpoint or what is that? API. Okay, endpoint or what is that? API. It is a key which is used to access the endpoint. What is the endpoint here? API. Here endpoint is nothing but what? API. To access this, compulsory you have to provide which one? Token. You have to provide the token. Compulsory you have to provide the token. So next is what are the basic steps? What are the basic steps? Now these tokens are stored, these tokens are stored within, okay, within what here? Database. These tokens are stored in the database and used by end user or client to access the endpoint. It is used by end user or client application to access which one here? Endpoint. End user or client application to access the endpoint. So that is called as what here? Token. So what are the basic steps? What are the basic steps to work with? to work with token based authentication. To work with token based authentication, the first step is install. Install here two applications. You have to install two applications. Just go to settings dot. So just go to settings dot py. Go to settings dot py. See here. Not from here. Now you cannot check this session based authentication from Postman. Why? Because it is desktop application. It is a desktop application, but session details get stored where? Browser. Getting on it. So that's the reason you cannot test it. If you want to test it, just test it from where? Browser. Okay. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I just so I just write here only. So in settings.py, in settings.py, now this is not. Now I'm not using which one? Session authentication. So REST framework, comma, you are trying to install one more application here. That is a REST framework dot. You are installing one more application here. That is REST framework dot REST underscore REST underscore framework dot. Now that is called as token authentication. You are trying to use token authentication. Now this is one more application. Now this is one more application. Okay. So this is one more application. Now REST framework dot authentication token. What is the name of this? REST framework dot authentication tokens here. So now this is used. Now you can see the REST framework dot authentication token module provide a simple built-in token-based authentication schema for Django REST framework. This method exchange user credentials means username and password. Okay, for a unique persistent token that is then used in subsequent API requests to verify their identity. Means here how it will verify it, how it is verified for every user, it will generate one token. For every user, it will generate one token. So it means this token is bind with what here? Username and password. These details are bind with what? Username and passwords here. Simple implementation is see here, single token per user. By default, the core implementation stores one token per what? User. Now, if you see persistent tokens, the tokens do not expire automatically and remain valid until they are explicitly deleted or regenerated. Means all these tokens will get stored inside what? Database. All these tokens will be stored inside what? Database. Okay, already we have run the migrations. Now you have to configure again in settings.py. In settings.py, now which authentication you are using? Token authentication. Now you have to define these two things. Okay, so installed apps. In installed apps, you have to install. In installed apps, you have to install two applications. One is a REST framework and one more is REST framework dot authenticate. These are modules only. If you take a every application is one package. Ring on it. These are modules only. REST framework is one module. REST framework dot authentication token is what? Another module. And here you have to configure at the same time you have to configure which framework are you using it to authenticate. Which framework are you using it to authenticate? Which type of authentication you are using? Token based authentication. After this, second step is now you have to run the migrations anyway. You have done the migrations. Okay. Anyway, you have done the migrations. Okay. What you do is you generate a token for the user. Now go to admin, just open the admin again, migrate it. Again, migrate because we added one more application, right? What is that authentication token? So what you do is make migrations, comma. So make migrations here. Okay, migrate. Okay, now migrations are done. Now run the server manage.py, run server, right? And you log in with the admin here. So already we created one user. Okay, we already created one user. Now here you can find one more model. And what is the name of the model is tokens. What is the name of the model here? Tokens. But when you can find this, if you add that module, then you can find one model. And what is the name of the model is tokens. So login. Now what you do is login. So after this second step is make migrations and migrate. Make migrations and what? Migrate. And third step is login. Login to which one? Admin. Login to admin. So once you log into admin, you can find one model registered with the admin. And what is the name of the model registered with admin? Tokens. The name of the model registered with admin is what? Tokens. Add a token here. Fourth step is click on these tokens and click on which one here? Add a token. Now you want to add a token to which user? You want to add a token to which user? I have only one user. Who's that user is? N8. I'm generating a token for which user? N8. N8 is a user. Okay, save. I'm saying what here? Save. So once I save, now for this user, it is generated this token. For which user? NIT user, it is generated one token. So I said it is a collection of some alphabets and what is that? Digits. And sometimes you find even special characters. So once it is generated, okay. So for one user, you'll get only one token, right? Okay, and this token is persist. It means there is no expiry. This token is what here? Persist, and this there is no expiry. Generate a token. Fourth one is generate. Generate what here? Token. So what do you do it for that? Click on. So click on which one? Tokens. Click on tokens model. Click on tokens model and add. Okay. Add a token. Okay. Click on tokens model and add a token for given user. But that user must be exist. Means first you have to create user, and for that user you have to generate what? Token. You have to generate the token for that particular user. You have to generate token for that particular user, right? Now once the token is generated, what is the next step is? Okay, once the token is generated, now this token you'll use it to access what? Endpoint. This token you use it for accessing what here? Endpoint. Okay. It means how you are accessing the view or endpoint by sending this token as a part of which one? Request headers. You send as a part of which one? request headers. Okay. Yes, you can also test it by using what? Postman, right? By using which authentication? Token based authentication. So let me create a view. Yeah, up to this you understood, right? Okay. Now this is a view. Remove this view. Is authenticated is required. Okay. But this is with authentication. It is not session authentication. So what is the name of the class is? What is the name of the class is? Token authentication. The name of the class is token authentication. So import token authentication and use here. And you are trying to verify, is it authenticated or not? Is it authenticated or not? Right? So now next is I have to give, okay, now I develop a view, and after developing a view, I try to define, is it this user is authenticated or not? See here. I have defined this views dot, okay. Now, okay. Now this is done. Okay, this is done. Okay, but now, for example, now in order to authenticate, first of all, the user must know what token. Suppose you want to access this endpoint. Suppose you want to access this endpoint. How can I access this endpoint? I required what? Token. Now you generated token, right? You generated token for one user. Which user? NIT. Then you have to give that token to whom? The person who want to access this endpoint. The person who want to access this endpoint, that person should know this token or not. Yes. Then I have to give the token. I have to give the token to whom? End user or the person who's accessing this particular endpoint. Getting or not? So see, if you want to access any API, you'll say generate API key. Then that will generate the API key and use that API key whenever you want to access the endpoint. Okay, right? That is JWT token. That is JWT. It is it is not stored anywhere. It is not stored anywhere. It is not stored anywhere. Getting or not? It is not stored anywhere, and you can manage it. Like you want that token to be available only for 1 day or 2 day or 1 hour or 2 hours. You can set the time, you can define the expiry, you can define the refresh, all this you can do it by using which token system? JWT. But this is a basic token authentication system where the token details get stored in what? Database. But in projects, will use this token authentication system or JWT? JWT. JWT because it is not stored anywhere and you can manage it. Manage it means you can define the expiry and everything while generating the token. Now, next step is you have to write one view. You have to write one view that should return what? Token. You have to write one view that should return what? Token. Token should be written. Yes or no? So for that, now there is one predefined view. And what is a predefined view? Predefined view, see here. Now REST framework dot authentication token import views, and there is an obtain authentication token. Getting on. So is it this is predefined or user defined? Authentication token is a predefined or user defined? Predefined. And this is having one view. And what is the name of the view is obtain authentication token. So that will return what? API key. That will return what? API key. Now what I'm doing is I'm just importing this urls.py. URLs. Now I'm not writing any view, but I'm using what here? Predefined view. Now if you want, you can call this view. So REST framework dot authentication token import. What you are importing? Views. And in this, there is one view. There is one view that will get what? Authentication token. Obtain authentication token is a predefined view. It is not your view, it is a predefined view which is available in which module? It is available in which module? It is available in REST framework dot authentication token. So you are not writing this. Okay, you are not writing this. This is already available. Now what I have to do? I have to access. I have to access the token. I have to access the token for a specific user or not? Yes. Understood? So you have to create, okay, you have to create a token for every user. Now where you are creating it, just go to admin panel, and in admin panel you are trying to create. In admin panel you are trying to create that, right? Okay, right? Now then next is, now already you created view, and this view should be accessed or not? Yes. You have to access this view by sending this token, right? So what I'm doing is, you can test it by using a request, or you can test it, you can test it by using a postman. Now there is a view, and you are sending a request to which view? View one, send it. But once you send it, is given authentication credentials are not provided. Authentication credentials are not provided. But you have to provide authentication details or not? Yes. You have to provide which one? Authentication details. Okay. Now, which authentication token? Okay. It is which authentication here? Token authentication. And try to copy here token. Try to copy the token. Now, this is a token created for one user or not? Yes. Now, send a request here. Is it correct or not? You just see here. Authentication credentials were not provided. View one registered. Just open the view urls.py. We'll just access this first API token, API token, sorry, API hyphen token, and one more is what? Authentication. This is for creating actually. This is used for what here? Creating. Suppose you need to give username and password here. So that is for getting details. What we'll do is we'll try to verify this is okay, right? Now API token authentication. Now this is for obtaining authentication. Now next, what I'll do is we'll try to create. Otherwise, we'll try to create a client program. See, you can create a token for specific user. Okay, you can create a token for a specific user. Now after that, I'm saying import. What is that here? Request. See, you can verify in Postman also. You can verify in Postman also, but I'm trying to check from here. Okay, I'll tell you even how to check in Postman. So this is my test file. So import request and define the base URL. So what is the base URL is? So you're sending a request. Now this is a base URL here, right? This is a base URL. And what is the endpoint is? The endpoint is a view one. Endpoint is a view one. Now here, what you have to do is you have to send authentication details. But what are these authentication details? Which authentication details you are sending? Token. Means as a part of request, you have to send whose details? Authentication details as a part of which one? Request headers. You have to send as a part of which one? Request headers. But there I've selected another. Here I said headers. What is the name of this key is authorization. What is the name of the key is authorization is a key, and you have to use what? Key. And this is a key. I have to use this key. But this you have to define as a part of which one? Headers. You have to define this as a part of headers. Authorization. Spelling is correct only. Authorization. And here, this is called which one? Token. Then response equal to request dot. What is the method is get. And there is a base URL. And one more is what? Endpoint. Base URL and endpoint. And print response. Now try to run this base uh, two times. Okay. और और कुछ है क्या? 401 means client error. Is authenticated. So what we send same token, right? Get request is authenticated, token authentication. Why username here? This is not required, right? Okay. Why username? I'll say hello. Username is not required, right? What we send token BD only. Oh, क्या करे यार? Headers. Headers सेट नहीं करे ना यार. Token is send नहीं करे. We create a token, but we have to send token, right? Okay. So set the headers. Now you can see it is what? 200. Okay, it is given what here? Response. Now print the response dot JSON. And what is the message is? I can see the message is what here? Hello. Now this is a persistent, right? This is a persistent token. This is a persistent token. Now you have to copy this. You have to send this to the mail. This token you send to the mail for that particular user. Okay. So now you can also test it. You can also test it. From where you can test it? Now that is from request. Now from browser also you can test it. How can you test from the browser? You have to type the URL and you have to send along with the yes. Otherwise, you can just open Postman. You can open the Postman and the Postman, right? This is a new request and I'm trying to access what you are trying to access here, view one. But it's saying authentication credentials are not there. You create the headers and what is the header is authorization and what is the value is this is a value. What is the header name? Authorization. Just now we define header or not? Yes. What is the header is authorization. Header is what? Authorization and token. Okay. Send a request. But here value is here you write token. Okay. Then send a request. And what is the message is hello. So you can also test it from Postman. Okay. But you need to add this authorization as a part of which one? Headers. Add this authorization as a part of headers and send this token. You need to tell this value is which one here? Token. Okay, right? So this is token based. This is which authentication? Token based. But the problem is you cannot set the time. You cannot set the time because it is persistent. It is what? Persistent. Okay. So I'll copy the steps here. After creating a token, uh, what do you do it? Develop a view. So go to views.py and develop a view. Now, but why this URL is? Why this URL is? You understood why this URL is? To verify whether token is correct or not. Okay, for that, this URL is used. Okay, go to the views.py and this is function based view. You can also write which view? Class based view also. Now urls.py, go to urls.py. This is the second step and define the URL patterns. In urls.py, define the URL patterns here. Okay, these are two URL patterns. And after that, test it. Next step is test by writing which application? Client application. So here I write a client application separately. So this is a client program and you can also test it. You can also test it in what? So test by using which one? Postman. Test by using Postman. Open the Postman and send a request by giving a request headers key as what? Authorization and value is what? Token. If the token is not valid, then it says authentication details are required. Okay. So this is how you try to test it. Okay, right? Now this is which authentication? Token based authentication. Now first one is session authentication and second is token based authentication. And one more type of token based authentication is there. And what is the next one is JWT. JWT token based. JWT token based what here? Authentication. JWT token based authentication. Okay. Now this authentication, it is useful because here you define certain properties. Suppose if I want to remove the token here, if it is normal token based authentication, if I want to delete a token for a specific user, I have to delete directly from what? Model. I have to disable directly in what? Model. I cannot disable. I cannot disable. I cannot enable. I cannot refresh. I cannot do all these operations on this token. If I want to disable, I have to delete it. I have to delete the token from where? Model. So I cannot set the properties like refresh. I cannot define the time. I cannot define multiple tokens. Suppose for refreshing you can use one token. For generating you can use one token. Now this kind of things you cannot do it by using normal token based system. In that case, you are moving to another token system called JWT. There is one more token system is there. And what is the name of that token system is JWT token based authentication. So for this, you have to install JWT REST framework. You have to install another module. And what is the name of the module is JWT REST framework. So compulsory security has to be provided because you are developing the endpoints and for your endpoints, you have to compulsory provide a security. But how you provide a security? By giving authentication and what? Authorization. Authentication is providing credentials. How you are providing that? Either by giving username and password. You are providing that either by using key. And that key is nothing but what? Token. That key is nothing but a token. Now this is next one, which is called as a JWT authentication. Now most of the API endpoints, okay, which are there in real time, all those are which one? JWT based. All those are JWT based. Now when you see this JWT authentication system, okay, implementing, for this you have to install one application and assign no Django REST framework, simple JWT library. Okay, this will generate what here? Key. It will generate a key or it will generate a token. Authentication in Django REST framework is a common pattern for stateless scalable APIs. Stateless as well as what? Scalable APIs. Means unlike session authentication, in session authentication, where user details get stored in session, it is stored in what? Session. Means whenever clients send a request to any endpoint, that endpoint contain which details? User details. That is what state oriented or state oriented or stateless. State oriented means where endpoint recognize the request is come from the same user. But this is what here? Stateless. Using session authentication, the server doesn't need to store session data. This is what? Stateless means where you're not storing whose details? Session details. You're not storing which details? Session details. The JWT is itself contained, signed with a secret key. So the server can verify its authentication and integrity with each request without a database lookup. It means you are not storing inside what? Database. You are not storing inside what? Database, and there is an access token, and a short-lived token example is 5 to 30 minutes used to access protected resources. Now, database is what? You are permanent. So sometimes what will happen? You purchase the API key. Yes or no? You purchase the API key. That API key is permanent or not? Yes. But sometimes you don't purchase it, then that is expire within given time. That is expire within given time. So there is a key which is permanent, but there is a key which is temporary, right? Now how can I generate these temporary keys? By using which one? JWT. So you can also access token will be there, and refresh token. Refresh token is nothing but, okay, suppose once this access token is expire, then it will, you can refresh that particular token by using another token. And what is that token is? A refresh token. And there is a structure. A JWT is a string comparison that parts a header, a payload containing the claims like user ID and what is that? Signature. Now we'll try to discuss this, how to work with JWT based authentication. Okay. So for that, so this will take some time. So what will I do is I'll try to explain this JWT based authentication. After this, we'll see what is pagination and what is filtering, right? So these things we'll discuss it. Okay. And after that, I'll tell you how to work with the Flask. Okay, there is one more web framework is there. And what is that framework is? Flask. Okay, right? I'll tell you how to work with that Flask. If possible, I'll tell you Fast API also. How to work with the Fast API for developing APIs. You can develop APIs using Flask. You can develop APIs using Fast API. You can develop APIs by using REST framework. Okay. So, but we'll see it. But see, I'll complete all this. I mean, Django REST framework. Then remaining, that is what I said, no Flask, these things, I'll tell you. Even I'll tell you Flask, how to work with the Flask, how to work with the fast API, right? So, I mean, that day in your, I mean, projects, you find a problem, right? Like deployment problem. Okay. So that also we'll discuss how to deploy your project in cloud environment. Okay. So how to make your project live. Okay, right? So you face some problems because when you are using cloud like Python anywhere, yes, it will take a lot of time and that will not provide more space. It will not provide much space. That is not your application problem. That cloud provided by Python people, that is not very big space. Okay, na? So because of that reason, you have a problem. But if you develop with some one view, two views, okay, simple database, or 1 2 HTML pages, no problem. But your project is very big and you have a lot of resources. You are using React, okay, React and JavaScript libraries. If you are using a lot of things, definitely you'll face a problem that is only for testing. Okay. So not making your project as a complete life. Okay, na? But even though I'll try to tell you. Okay, right? Yes, thank you. We'll see tomorrow. Right. क्या बोले प्रोजेक्ट के बारे में क्या बोले? ये प्रोजेक्ट के बारे में क्या बोले? अभी सही सही है यार। वो लोग देखे ना आपका प्रोजेक्ट? कौन देखे? नहीं कर सकते हो, मैं बोला ना। नहीं होता यार, मैं बोल रहा हूँ। जो रहता है उनको भी नहीं मालूम। वही बोल रहा हूँ यार, जो रहता है उसको भी नहीं मालूम। ओ, पाइथन एनीवेयर में मुश्किल है। मुश्किल है वो, नहीं होता। आपका प्रोजेक्ट उसमें होता है क्या? नहीं होता, बहुत मुश्किल रहता। कभी कभी होता, कभी कभी पूरा स्टेप्स अच्छा ही रहता, पूरा अच्छा ही रहता। पर जब डिप्लॉय करते हैं ना, फिर मुश्किल रहता है यार। हो गया आपका? किसको अभी प्राइज नहीं मिला? किसको बाद में? बस सब लोग ए पे करे होगे बहुत ना, ए रिलेटेड।